Hey, welcome. So this video is about pure awareness or open awareness, or sometimes called non-dual awareness. It's really the core of what every meditation practice and tradition is about. One way we can explore different types of practice in general is to look at top-down and bottom-up approaches. Essentially, a top-down approach is just trying to drop into this awareness, trying to surrender fully to everything that's happening, not control anything, to just be totally in the moment, uninhibited. The problem with this is when we try to really let go, we often end up thinking and caught in our same habitual patterns, our same habitual thoughts. The reality is that the mind is very sticky and clingy and graspy. It grasps onto different things, it grasps onto different ideas of what it wants or what it doesn't want, or who we think we are, or what the mind thinks it is. So when we try to just really let go and just surrender and to just be without any trying to do whatsoever, often we just end up caught in our regular neuroses, caught in our regular way of being, and there may or may not be any benefit at all to trying these kind of pure awareness practices. On the other hand, we have the bottom-up practices, which are really bringing more awareness and openness and non-judgment and clarity to all of our experience. And what we're doing is we're deconstructing the self. We are looking at how we grasp, how we hold on to certain things, how our mind negotiates our experiences, how we try to move away from what we don't want or don't like, and how we try to move towards what we like. So with these bottom-up practices, what we're doing is we're bringing more awareness and openness and actually acceptance to these processes, to the graspiness of the mind. And through the openness and awareness and clarity and acceptance, these things start to change automatically. So it's different. A lot of psychotherapy is about implementing these changes and practices and really making yourself do things. It's, okay, here's the problem, what can we do about it? But what mindfulness practices teach is that just observing things as they are, just being open and clear with what you're experiencing without judgment, which means fully accepting and surrendering to the experience, this alone allows things to change. We come across this idea specifically in Gestalt therapy, and they call it the paradoxical theory of change. It's this idea that so long as we resist something, it stays stuck because we're in this inner conflict with it. We're using up all this energy to try to fight or get away or change, and we just get rigid in our neuroses. And that by actually accepting where we are, accepting everything as it is, allows us to kind of give up the battle, and then through that there's more freedom, and then change can happen more naturally and more organically. So it's this idea that pushing harder often just creates more stuckness, and that surrendering can often lead to the freedom that allows change to actually happen. So what these meditative traditions are teaching is that all of our struggles and suffering comes from attachment, that we get attached to a certain outcome, or we're attached to certain ideas about ourselves or what we want to be in our lives. So we may be attached to being an important person or accomplishing a certain thing or being in a specific type of relationship or getting a certain level of success in our career. So we have all these attachments, these ideas of these are the things I want for myself and these are the things that will make me happy. And the fear is that if we give these things up, we'll either be failures or we would be resigning. We would be saying, oh no, I can't do that. I'm not even going to try. So the key here is actually that we don't have to give up our ambitions at all. But what we do have to give up is our attachment to a specific outcome. So it's this idea that, okay, I'm going to try really hard to be successful in this area, and I'm going to be okay if I'm not. So that's the challenge, and that's what these meditation traditions are really getting at, is that we can be fully okay with things as they are. We can not be attached to any specific outcomes, but we can still work and try. We can still very much try to make things happen, want to make the world a better place, want to make ourselves better or be more successful. These things are great, but we have to be willing to accept and be willing to be okay with not. We have to be willing to be okay with ourselves just as we are in this moment. And so this is the challenge of what is really being taught in these traditions. Can we give up the idea that we need to be all of these things, whatever these things are? So how do we do this? How do we become more free? There's a lot of debate. Some say just go right into the freedom, just practice non-attachment. Practice being fully accepting of the moment. There's also the bottom-up approach, which is really deconstructing all of the things happening in our experience, deconstructing the self and how we make meaning and value out of the world, and how our thoughts and feelings interact with each other, what is happening in them. And by bringing a lot of awareness to these parts, we can kind of unstick them. Let me give an example. There's a really well-known teacher named Adyashanti. He's very well respected, and he teaches the style of meditation which he calls true meditation, which is just really fully letting go, which is really doing nothing. And he says that this is really the ultimate way. This is really what it's all about. And he's absolutely right. He was actually a marathon cyclist, and he was really committed and worked really hard. And he took this same work ethic to his meditation practice. And when he was studying under a teacher, she was saying, "You're going too hard. You're going too intense. You have to let go." But he was really intent. He really wanted this awakening, and he really pushed himself. After all this pushing, he got to this point where he pretty much couldn't handle it anymore. It wasn't working. He wasn't getting there, and he basically gave up. And in that giving up, in that letting go, that's when he had his awakening. And so what he teaches is that, okay, don't try so hard. Actually, just fully let go. The problem is with this kind of teaching is that it ignores the fact that he tried really hard for a long time. And in that trying, there was undoubtedly a real big shift in the way that his mind worked, a real big shift in the way that he related to his thoughts and feelings. He was deconstructing his experience. He was freeing himself from these patterns. And then what he did was he gave up. So he talks a lot about these students that come to him that have been practicing meditation for 20 years and have still not had an awakening experience. And what he does is he tells them, just let go, just stop. And he gives them this sort of transmission, which is embodying a certain energy, this energy of non-doing, this energy of being totally open and okay with the moment. And some people are ripe. They're ripe to let go, to be in this space where things just totally fall away, and they could be in the total non-doing, the total acceptance of things as they are. But to get to this ripe place usually takes a lot of work. It usually takes some really ardent practice. And so Adyashanti tells all these stories of these students coming after 20 years of practice and essentially getting rigid in their practice, getting stuck in this way of practicing. And it's actually the letting go that allows them to get what they were really looking for. I think this model makes a lot of sense in that we put in a lot of practice. We look at what's happening in my body, what's happening in the experience of feeling. How are these subtle feelings interacting with my thoughts? How are my thoughts influencing my feelings? And really deconstructing all this. And what it's doing is it's ungrasping the mind. The graspiness quality, the mind's always trying to create this idea of who we are and what's important and what's valuable and what's going to make us happy. Deconstructing all that by just paying a lot of attention to it with awareness, being really aware of where our values are and how our thoughts and feelings interact with each other and what's driving them. And through this deconstruction, through seeing the transient nature of the self and the mind and the feeling space, that these things don't last forever, that they're not these fixed, solid things we previously subconsciously perceived them to be, but that there's actually nothing fixed, that everything is in this flow. It's after we've done all that work, after we've really deconstructed this stuff, then we can really let go in the abyss, and the neurotic kind of patterns of the mind don't keep coming up and pulling us back into these thought patterns and these outdated value systems that are no longer serving us. So that being said, we're going to do this kind of top-down practice, and there's a lot of different emphasis that different traditions put on. There are essentially different ways into this experience. And there's a paradox here. The paradox is that we're really trying not to do anything, and yet if we don't try to do anything, things still happen. So we have to find some way to make nothing happen. And that involves some doing, but doing isn't nothing. And you can kind of see the trickiness of this. So there's different little hacks, ways in. And the first thing to look at is just the quality of awareness, that what we're trying to do is we're trying not to be in our normal kind of habitual thought patterns. We're trying to just be aware. So the first piece is that we're identified with awareness. We're in a place of awareness. So that's the most important thing about this practice, is staying in this place of awareness, which isn't easy, which is why other practices that bring us back here over and over could be helpful. Another emphasis that some traditions have is looking at the spacious quality of awareness. And what we're really doing is seeing what are the limitations of awareness? Where does awareness start and stop? And what they're really trying to point out is that awareness is boundless. There are no boundaries. There are no borders of how far awareness can stretch out. And a lot of these practices are playing with this. It's dropping awareness out of where it usually feels, which is like up here. And sometimes we drop it into the heart, or sometimes we just drop it into the space around us and playing. So it's playing with the non-localized aspect, right? So looking at, is awareness really fixed here, or is it not? And there's a lot of different practices that accomplish this. One is actually body scans, which is just bringing your awareness into different parts of your body and trying to be aware from those spaces. So it's shifting the me, or the centered awareness, out from right here into different parts of the body. And that's a really valid practice that can have really profound impacts when you do it a lot. Another practice is to just drop into the heart and be aware from the heart as opposed to from up here. And these could be powerful. And some are to try to have no localization of awareness at all. So to just be expansive awareness, to imagine yourself existing like a cloud, or even bigger, even more expansive. So there's no centeredness to the awareness. It's all just... So we're going to try a few of these practices out, a few different cues to try to get us into this more expansive or non-localized state of awareness, or non-dual state of awareness. Don't worry if you find these difficult, if they don't click. These are just experiments, and it's seeing, are there opportunities here? Are there doors that are open for us? And if there's not, that's fine. We can go back to a practice that's really more observing of our thoughts and feelings, because that's really foundational to kind of get to this place, to untangle all of that. So there's more freedom and more openness and more spaciousness for us to tune in. But especially if you've been doing those practices for a while, this might be really helpful. I think it really makes sense to approach things from both directions, to really see what works for us individually and to keep going. Some people, they only do these top-down practices and it really works for them. So it's really about what works for you, noticing where you're challenged, where things are getting stuck, or where there's resistances, and finding the open doors, finding the ways through to overcome these barriers. Okay, so let's practice. You can start by closing your eyes if that's comfortable. And again, some people do these practices eyes open, and that's totally fine. Just notice at first what's happening in your experience, what's happening internally. What are you aware of happening in your inner world right now? And what is happening? How is this noticing of our inner world different from our normal way of being? So we're looking at, what are we doing right now? And how are we doing that? How are we controlling our awareness? How are we opening and directing our awareness? It's noticing that we have this control to tune into this expansive awareness. And the next question is, where are we being aware from? So where do we feel like our awareness is rooted? And it's often kind of behind the eyes in our head somewhere. And just notice that. See if you can find it there. What we usually find is that there's a notion that it's there, but if we look, there's nothing solid. Like there's a notion that there's something there, that awareness is rooted there. There's no real fixed place. And so see if you can drop your awareness out of your head or thinking space and drop it into your heart. And not be aware of your heart, but be aware from your heart. And many people talk about the value of heart awareness. The heart's really the center of our being. So if we're trying to be a balanced, integrated individual, the core of our awareness is going to be radiating from our heart and not out of our headspace so much. And this is just an experiment to see if you can essentially unhook your awareness from the head face area and just drop it into your heart and just be aware from your heart. What is it like to feel from the heart space? To be aware from the heart space? Now look at where are the limitations of this awareness? How far out can we be aware? Can our awareness expand outside of our body? Can we be aware of the space around our body? Can we just rest in this open awareness? Just allowing things to be totally as they are, without trying to change a thing. And just notice if the mind's coming in, if there's any distractions coming up. And that's okay. We're just practicing being totally okay with those things. But coming back to this pure awareness, letting go of all trying to do anything, and just finding this awareness that already exists. We're just tuning in to something that's already there without trying to change a thing. What is this like? What's it like to be in awareness? Are there challenges coming up? And again, just accepting those and surrendering. It's this surrendering layer by layer as we notice these things in our experience. We just allow them to be. We give up any sort of judgment or resistance to them. And just abiding in this place of pure awareness. Feeling totally open. How expansive can we experience this awareness? Can we let go of the idea of me and just rest in this pure awareness? There's no center. There's no me. There's just this, the experience. Okay, and slowly coming back, opening your eyes. The question is, how is this for you? Did it work for you? You get tripped up in this trying not to try. Because to really let go of all effort is not easy. To really let go of all control. Our minds, our bodies, they're really stuck in these patterns of controlling our experience or negotiating our experience. So trying to really surrender and to allow that to stop happening can be quite difficult. And some people, they can get it. They just go there. But for a lot of us, and myself included, it was really difficult. I did have to do a lot of practice in deconstructing these really intense thought patterns and these really intense ways of resisting and negotiating feelings, and to just open bit by bit to allow things to be, to bring more awareness to them, and to let them unravel on their own. And then through this process, these kind of long processes of just being with what's happening, accepting it, allowing it to come up, things slowly got more open and there became more freedom, and I was more easily able to drop into this place of just being, of just not trying to do anything. So if this worked for you, amazing. If it didn't, that's totally fine. It's good to know, but you can keep doing whatever practices you find work for you and come back to this one. So thank you for practicing with me. If you found this helpful, you can like and subscribe to the channel. I have a lot more planned, trying to do videos quite regularly, and best of luck.